So this is the newest compact camera from Sony. It's the ZV-1 and we took it to the streets of Bologna in Italy to test all of its features and to tell you if it's just a small toy or if it's a real camera. And spoiler alert, yeah, it's quite impressive and I'll tell you why. So in this video I'm gonna show you the unboxing, all the features and all the tests we made in this order that you can see here on screen. If you want to skip to a specific part of the video, you can just click on the link in the description, there's going to be the list over there also. Or you can just hover your mouse over the timeline of this video and you're going to see that it's already chopped up in the specific chapters. But there's a bunch of features that I didn't know also when I started testing this one, so I'd recommend you to just go through the whole video and it's going to be quite interesting. Alright, so this is that fun moment where we all pretend that I didn't open this box before and that this is the first very unboxing, and it says content creators and vloggers, so it's really meant for this kind of use. So what we got inside here, we got paperwork as usual. Whoop, don't need it. We open it up, we have, so we got a small micro USB cable to charge it, and we have the dead cat that we're gonna put on the hot shoe, comes already attached to it, so that we can reduce a little bit of the effect of the wind on the microphones. And inside it we have, let's take this out of here. Now for the camera itself, here we go. It doesn't come with this, but it's really practical since it's really small, just made out of leather, and it's so nice. So here we have it, the ZV-1. So everything in this camera takes us to think that this is a video camera first. It's capable of doing 4K video at 24 or 30 frames per second, or for those that are using PAL like me in Europe, we can do it at 25 frames per second. But if you lower down the resolution to 1080p, then you're able to do 50 or 100 frames per second, or if you're using NTSC, then you can do it at 60 or 120 frames per second. Regarding the lens, we got this 24-70 equivalent to a full frame camera. And it's a fixed lens, you cannot change it, but it's got a pretty good range. And maybe for filming yourself, I would like something that is a little bit wider than 24mm, but it still works quite well. It's got also this articulated LCD screen that is just magic. I just wanted so much for my A7 III to have this also. Right now I'm filming myself and I cannot really see what's going on, even if it's recording. So let's just hope for the best. And on top, they put the hot shoe for you to insert your microphone. There's an entrance here on the side also, so if you're really willing to record yourself, vlog around, and since the microphone comes here on top and the LCD screen opens to the side like this, it's not going to be blocked by it, so you can still use both of them with no worries and without having to attach anything to the camera, and they can easily fit in your pocket, so it's really handy. And in front of it they put this small grip here that is just really nice. You can just put your finger up here and there's a space for the thumb on the back, and the camera is safe at all times. You're not gonna let it slip or something like that. It's so easy to handle. And on the top, you've got a button just for taking pictures and one dedicated to video. So when you're in photo mode and you just want to record something very quickly that is happening, you can just press the video mode and it will start recording directly. And since we don't have the dial anymore on the top, this is a really good feature that just saves you a lot of time. On top, we got also the on-off button that actually you don't need that much, because when you open the LCD screen, the camera turns on automatically. On top of the camera, you got also the on-off button that you don't really need to use that much, because when you open the LCD screen, the camera turns on automatically. And when you close it down, it shuts off automatically also. You got your mode button to change the mode what you're using, if you're going to be photographing or filming or whatever you want to do. And up here on the top, on the edge, we have this customizable button that you can just configure to be whatever you'd like. Or if you just leave it as it is, this is a quick access to a portrait mode. This means that when you're filming yourself and you don't want to mess around with all the configurations, if you're in manual mode or whatever, you just want to film yourself in the best way possible, meaning having a really blurry background, you can just press this and the camera will auto-configure itself into auto mode to be able to capture it that way. It's not an artificial way of doing it like iPhones or some other brands can do. This is just changing really the configuration of the camera for you automatically. So it's gonna set the maximum aperture of the lens, which is 1.8, It's gonna film at 24mm, so as wide as possible. It's gonna do everything for you just to access really quickly. And here on the back we got all the buttons that we are really used to having in Sony cameras, and also the dial that is really handy, and you can customize all these to be whatever you'd like. So if you prefer to have the ISO on the wheel, if you prefer to have some other quick access on other button, then it's up to you. And on the side you've got the microphone jack that I told you before. You get the micro USB port that you can use to charge the camera directly. It doesn't come with a charger for the battery, so you have to attach it directly to the plug. And below there's a micro HDMI port that you can use to connect to an external monitor or to your computer, as you prefer. And here on the bottom we have one port for an SD card and one battery. And I really recommend you getting a second one because this battery is finished quite fast. So it can be really handy to have a second one. And one thing to notice is that opening the door down here actually blocks your access to the support of the camera. So if you actually have something connected here to put it on a tripod or something like that, you're always gonna have to detach this support to be able to access this port. Not a big deal, but just something that you have to pay attention to. So this is a 1.8 to 2.8 lens. So this means that when you zoom in a little bit, this is not going to be kept at 1.8, so it's going to step down a little bit, and it does that quite fast. So at 24 you have the maximum opening, which is 1.8, and that you can see right now on the screen. But as soon as you get to around 28mm, you're already at 2.8. And still it's a pretty good aperture, and it's gonna go through until 70mm, so you can really use this to keep your ISO as low as possible. Regarding the field of view, this is what you get when you're at 24mm in Full HD. So you have quite a lot of space around you to show whatever you want to show and to be right in the middle and perfectly in focus. But if you step up to 4K, then there's a small crop factor like this. That is not a big deal, but you can see the difference. So if you ever find yourself in need of a little bit more space to show your surroundings, you can attach something like a Gorilla Pod or something like that and just reach out a little bit further, and it might probably be enough. Quick shout out to the unofficial sponsors of this video, Dana, MusicBed and Moment, for providing us with a lot of the equipment we used in this video, like the lighting, microphone, camera, and without them this episode wouldn't be possible. And if you're interested in knowing what equipments exactly we used in this episode, you can check the links in the description below. They're affiliate links, so if you buy through them, you help support the channel, but at no extra cost at all for you. And one of the features that really impressed me in this camera was the autofocus. When you're in full HD, you have face autofocus, and if you're close enough to the camera, it switches to eye autofocus automatically, and it really keeps track of your eye at all times. You don't have to worry at all about focus with this camera. And when you step up to 4K, you actually lose this capability, but in my tests, also in 4K, the focus never went away. The only time that you can actually have it, you can ask the camera to not focus on you, is if you use the feature they inserted in this camera called Product Showcase. So when you activate this, you're actually telling the camera that if you show something closer to the lens, that it's gonna put that in focus, even if your face is still visible. Because what happens if you don't have this feature is if the camera is tracking your eye or your face to focus, even if you show something closer to the lens, if you can still see your eye or your face, it's gonna keep track on you. So you can't really show something unless you cover your face. One other feature that we have to comment on is this beauty effect that you can use when you're filming at 1080p, not 4K. It's got 4 different levels. It can be off entirely, or it can be in low, medium, or high. And you can see on the screen right now the difference between each one of them. And I would say that the highest one is way too much. It just looks so plasticky, but the medium and low are quite good. And depending on the light conditions you have around you, you can just go with one of them and it just looks quite natural. Another key feature of this camera is the stabilization. So it's got different levels. You can set it to off, meaning no stabilization at all. And you can see how shaky that can be, even with a really slow walk. The medium setting, where it kind of compensates a little bit for heavier steps, but still you can see a little bit of shake. And the active one, that is just incredible. It keeps the shot so stable, it's really good. And I compared also with the A7 III in-body stabilization. The lens is not stabilized, but it was quite wide, so you can have a feeling of how good it could be. In-body stabilization from the A7 III. And it's also pretty good, but it lags a little bit in comparison to the active mode on the ZV-1. So really, it's a camera meant for vloggers and people that are gonna be walking and filming themselves. I tried stabilizing the footage, the medium footage, on Premiere, and it didn't work really well. You can see how wobbly the trees and everything around can be, even using really low settings. Okay, so this is a huge one. While shooting this part of the video about stabilization, I found myself trying to stabilize the first footage that I did without any in-camera stabilization on Premiere, DaVinci, and it all looks a little bit wobbly, all looks a little bit strange, but I discovered that inside the camera there's a gyroscope registering every single move you do with it. And if you download Ctrl browser from Sony, you can open all your footage in the app, and every time you see this small symbol by a clip, it means that it has stabilization information inside of it. These ones here are super slow motion, they don't have it, but these others all have it. So what you can do is use this one to stabilize the footage, export it, and then import it inside Premiere or whatever. What I did is I compared the same clip without any in-camera stabilization, stabilized by DaVinci, by Premiere, and by the Catalyst browser. And you can see on the screen right now the huge difference it makes in each one of them. Catalyst browser is the only one that is not wobbly, not strange. It does crop in a little bit, but it's the price you have to pay to have it perfectly stabilized, and it's totally worth it. So what about audio quality? The built-in microphone from the camera is already pretty good. And this is the audio from the ZV-1 without anything, without dead cat or microphones or anything, just a built-in microphone. And the voice is even a little bit too bright for my taste, but it worked okay. And in the box also you get a small dead cat that you can just mount on the hot screw. So if it's a windy day or something like that, you can just put it on and it's really gonna help. So this is the audio from the ZV-1, only with the dead cat on top. But a really good add-on to this camera is using the Rode Wireless Go. That is a very tiny microphone, and then you can also attach it to yourself, and that's what I'm using here right now. It's not gonna change too much the size of the camera, so I really recommend it. And this is the ZV-1 with the Rode Wireless Go on top of it. The only thing that I wasn't a big fan of is that the hot screw is actually on the left side of the camera, but the microphone jack is on the right side. So instead of having a really small cable just connected sideways, you actually have to cross the cable all over the other side to connect it. But well, it can stay over the camera, it doesn't bother you that much. Now the frame rates, this is just insane. This camera can do up to 1000 frames per second, and yeah, the quality is not that good, but it's just really cool to have. If it's really well lit, a really bright place, yeah, you can use it, you can have fun with it. You can use it maybe for stories or something that requires a little bit lower resolution. You can't really pop it up, like upscale it to 4K or 1080p and make it look good, but it's just so fun to have it. And to be really usable, I guess like 240 is already okay, and the 120 and below that is just perfect. There's no problem at all. You can perfectly use those, even upscale a little bit, it's not a big problem. But 240, maybe it's the edge there where like some people are gonna find it usable, some people not really. It really depends on what you wanna use it for, but it's so cool to play with. And you can see the footage we did here, it was just so fun. Now this is a good one. If you're already a filmmaker and you know what an ND filter is, this camera has an internal ND filter. It's just incredible. If you don't know what it is, it's just a piece of glass you put in front of your lens to block a little bit of the light that is coming inside. And this sounds a little bit weird to do, but it's useful in video because usually you want to keep your shutter speed double the frame rate you're recording. So if you think about cinema, you would be recording at about 24 frames per second, so you should be recording with your shutter at 1/50, which can be quite low if it's really bright outside. So the ND filter tries to block it a little bit so that you can keep those settings and you can have the maximum aperture, you can still have that blurry background, and it's a 3-stop ND filter. One other function that made me quite happy to discover that it was possible to do with this camera was using it as a webcam. So you can just download Imaging Edge Webcam, it's an official app from Sony, connect the camera through the USB cable, and it's going to be recognized directly on apps like Zoom, Hangout, or whatever you want to use. And it just looks so much better than any native webcam on any notebook or even with the phone itself. So it's a nice little extra feature this camera can do also. So the LCD on this camera is actually touchscreen, and when you touch it, you're actually activating the tracking mode. So whatever you touch on, the camera is gonna try to keep track of that during the whole shot. So it can be really handy if you wanna just keep focus on a person or on a car passing by, whatever you want, and you can do it quite well. Just in situations where I had multiple things passing in front of my subject many times and it was quite difficult to keep track of it, like behind other stuff, then it had a little bit of difficulty and sometimes it got a little bit lost. But when the object was totally clear on the scene, even moving a lot from one side of the frame to the other, it just kept track perfectly. Okay, so what about photography? Well, the camera is really nice to have, especially for street photography. It's so handy to have a small compact camera in your pocket that you can just pull it out, and it's really quick to set it up to shoot for the first time. So it's very difficult, you're gonna miss any kind of special moment if you wanna really grab it. And of course, it shows way less than a proper camera with a bigger lens, so you can keep yourself a little bit more secretly going around the city. Stabilization on this camera is amazing, especially at 70mm. It really helps to keep the shot really steady without any worries. I took all the pictures in RAW and put it inside Lightroom to develop RAW files. I could change all the white balance, I could change whatever I wanted. This is the moment that I'm really missing to have the viewfinder, because I can't see anything on the LCD screen shooting against the sun. When it was really bright outside, it wasn't quite enough. And as you can see, the blurriness that it can produce is not exactly the same as you would get from a 1.8 on a full frame camera, but it was pretty good. And regarding low light photographs, I'd say that for my taste, I wouldn't go over ISO 2000. It started to get a little bit too grainy and too much color noise, so I would stay around 1000 maximum in general. So stick to photographing places a little bit more well lit than some of the tests that I did. And you can still fix some of this in post-production in Lightroom if you just crank it up, the noise reduction to 50 or something like that. But then the image begins to get a little bit too soft, so I wouldn't recommend it really. And what about picture profiles? And well, being a Sony camera, you get all the picture profiles that you get also in the A7 line or A60000 line. So you got HLG, you got Cine, you got S-Log. But since this is really small sensor camera, it's got a 1-inch sensor, which is quite bigger than a smartphone, but still way smaller than an APS-C and way smaller than a full frame sensor. I wouldn't really force using S-Log, for example, but I found out that usually I record in HLG with the A7 III, so we shot a couple of clips in HLG 3 using BT 2020 in both cameras, and I tried to match them in post-production, and it was quite easy. Actually, the colors match really well, so at least for my case, in which I want to use this camera as a B cam or as A cam in days that I don't want to carry the big camera around, I'd say that it's really easy to match footage from both the cameras and just have one single video in which people mostly won't be able to tell which camera is which depending on the situation, depending on the scene you're shooting. One other feature that is really useful about this camera is that it does not have a limit of record time. So you can just leave it running as long as the battery and the SD card still can manage it, it's gonna be recording. If you wanna record some event and you wanna be going around with your best camera, with your A cam, and leave this one as a backup, just filming just to be sure that you're gonna have all the moments, like in a wedding, for example. Is it working? Is it in focus? Not really. Now yes. You're recording? No, maledetto. The battery on this camera is quite small, so I wouldn't rely on it, but you can attach it to a power bank, or you can even attach it to a plug, for example, and it's gonna keep charging, and it's not just going to discharge slowly as many cameras do. It's really going to charge itself. So you're gonna be able to keep the camera at 100% the whole time, or at least at a fixed level of battery, and just recording limitless. If you have a 32GB SD card, you can record around 40 minutes of 4K video. So whatever SD card you have, just multiply by that and you can have an idea of how long is it going to last. And of course, one of the best features of this camera is exactly the weight. So it's so compact and lightweight that you don't feel it at all just carrying it in your pocket or in your purse, in your bag. And also when you're filming yourself with your arm stretched out like this, it's not a kind of camera that is going to weigh you down and it's going to be difficult to carry or difficult to stand like a really long time. So you're not going to have any problems with that. Okay, so now the final and most important question of all. Should you get this camera or not? Well, it depends. It depends on what you want to do with it. If you're just going to travel around with it, you just want a small and compact camera but powerful to take some pictures around and enjoy, yeah, it's a really good camera and it's got some features that much bigger and much more expensive cameras have, and in the compact camera area, it's doing really well. So I think this is a really good bang for buck. Now, if you want this one to be your A-cam, your workhorse, the one that you're going to do even client work with, I'm not really sure about this. I think you should go for one that you can at least change the lenses so that you can be a little bit more flexible. So comparing the prices on the main websites, you can see that around the same price you can find from Canon the SL3 and the M50, which are really good cameras, and they come about 100 euros or $100 less than the ZV-1, or a little bit above this level you have from $150 to $200 or euros more. You can go into the APS-C area with Sony with the A6100 or A6400. And the M50 and the SL3, they are really good cameras. They offer you the possibility of exchanging the lenses, which gives you a little bit more flexibility, but they lack all the cool features that Sony added to the ZV-1 and that can be especially useful if you're thinking about shooting video. And if you go to the A6100 or A6400, that price is without lens, and both these cameras don't offer in-body stabilization, so you're gonna have to be careful about which lens you're gonna buy. Okay, so what about those that already have a camera and are looking for some extra features or looking for a B cam? Yeah, then I think definitely you have a really good choice on this one, especially if you're already using Sony cameras. As I showed you before, the matching between this guy here and other Sony cameras is fairly easy. And this is such a compact and powerful vlogging camera that you can actually also use as a top-down camera. You can also use the B cam to film events and have something that's going to be there recording the whole time that you don't need to worry about while you go around with your main camera. So yeah, it can be a really good choice. Alright, so if this video was useful somehow, please like, subscribe and share it with your friends, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!